Hello there. I want to show you all a couple of macros, actually one macro that I have run. Right now we're looking at my main dictionary, and if you look in here I have several style with a number after it, and so of course when I stroke that 2 strokes it spits out this right here. And let's just open up this one here and look at it. When I was in federal court, this was a really nice macro to use. You can see it's got the style of the case, and then United States of America versus Joe Black. Well, if I wanted to make that the long way, I would have to do, for instance, Control D to add dictionary entry, and then STAO asterisk L spacebar TWO, and then hit enter. And then of course type in the information. Of course it's in here now because I've already got that one highlighted in my main dictionary. But I would have to hit that and then put it in my main dictionary and fill all this stuff in. And in federal court we would have 10 or 15 settings in the morning, and I'd get a docket sheet beforehand, and I really got tired of recreating the wheel, so to speak, each time, when the variables were, for instance, the cause number and then maybe the defendant's name right here, and this other stuff was kind of the same stuff all the time. So what I decided to do was to make a macro that would do the same thing and kind of help me do some of this easily for me. And since I had some unusual names in a federal court down in Brownsville, you can see here like this one here, Odilon Bustamante Estrada. Well, I didn't want to write that all the time, or Abelardo Sanchez Garcia, stuff like that. That would be kind of difficult to have to write all the time. So if I knew that, for instance, I was going to have Joe Black as my defendant, the second case for the day, I also wanted to set up a deal where I could hit style 2 and have this part spit out, because my judge was very consistent in calling the case and then United States of America versus. So I thought, well, if I can use this one, how about if I can use the DEF2 also. And you see here I've got many strokes, defendant 2, 15, 14, 4, 5, etc. And I can get those same names and have them dropped in here by just typing def to 13 or whichever one related to whichever case. So I was trying to save myself some time, and it worked very well, and it saved me a lot of hassle, especially with making my real time look pretty good. But let's go back a little bit and let's see this macro in action. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take these and I'm going to delete them, and you'll see I'm taking them out by deleting the strokes out. I want you to kind of follow along here. And so we don't have a defendant 1 or defendant 2 or whatever. And let me go back over here to the style, STAOIL asterisk, and let me delete these out, and you can watch me do that. And I'm going to hit the letter to delete these. My hyper key is in, or just hit the delete button. So here I've taken out most of these, and now I'm just going to exit out of my dictionary, and I'm going to just let the macro run quickly, and then I'll dissect the macro. I use Control Spacebar, and what that does is prompts me for a stroke. So I'm going to put in TWO, and I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to ask me for the cause number. So let's do 2013 CR-1234, and then now let's hit let's call the defendant Breck Record. That would be me. So you saw a bunch of things just flicker right there, and the macro was built, and it built my entries for me. Now let's go back to the main dictionary and let's just look at those and see what happened. Let's go to style, S-T-A-O-I-L, asterisk, and look. Let's look here. Here we are. Is style 2 is what it put into my dictionary. Now let's look and see if it did the D-E-F-T asterisk 2 also. And of course there it is, because you remember I deleted all those with the exception of a few here, but there was not a defendant 2 or a style 2. Now the question is, how in the heck did all that take place? How did it do this for me by just hitting a little command to run the macro? So let's dissect the macro that I made. I'm going to go to Alt-U, User Settings. I'm going to go to the Edit tab. I'm going to go to Macros. I'm going to hit something, and I'm going to hit the letter S because I know that's where I want to go down to. ST will get me even better. Here is the style entry that I'm looking for. Now here's the macro name. Most macros just have a name. With Keith's, he's put the RT up beside some of them, or CC for captioning, stuff like that. I made this one myself, but if you notice on here, there's a couple of pipe symbols. And if you remember when I ran the macro, it prompted me for an enter stroke, which I typed in TWO, and then it prompted me for enter the cause number, and of course that's where I typed in the 2013-CR-1234, and then it prompted me for the defendant's name. Now Jeremy put in, this is around the early 2000s, a command or a feature called macro variable, and I'm going to open up the Eclipse manual here, and if you search for macro variable, you can find it on around page 265, where Jeremy kind of describes how the macro variable works, and you can kind of go through there and read along. But if you notice the pipe symbols, where I had the enter name, enter the stroke, defendant's name, etc., he talks about how you make that work in this area, where he says if you want something more specific than just enter text with a macro variable, add a pipe sign and a prompt to the macro name. So let's go back over here to Eclipse, and let's look here at this macro real quick. I'm going to highlight it and I'm going to click on Edit. Now if you look at this macro closely, you see those macro variable 1 and macro variable 2, and here's macro variable 3, and then here's macro variable 1 again, and then macro variable 3. I used the macro variable 1 to enter the stroke number, which was the TWO, and that what prompted me when it said enter the stroke up here. And if you let me cursor over here, you'll see enter stroke is after the name of the macro, pipe enter stroke. That's what macro variable 1 is. Enter cause number is the macro variable 2, and then the macro variable 3, if I can cursor over here now, is enter defendant's name. So I've got stroke here and I've got stroke down here. Now if we look a little bit more closely at how the macro works, I've got Control D to enter a dictionary entry, and so it would prompt me for the steno keyboard and for me to enter some strokes. Well, this macro actually types in for me STAO asterisk EUL spacebar, which then drops it down to a second line, and then command macro variable 1, and that's where it prompts me to actually type in the stroke that I want to use, which is in this case you saw I typed in TWO, and then it's enter. And then after that, if you remember, when you do a add dictionary entry, when you hit enter, it will prompt you for a cause number, or the way you want to define the strokes that you're building here, in my case style 2. So when the macro runs and hits enter, then it puts the next window up, and I'm able to type in the cause number, which I typed in 2013-CR-1234, and that's what filled in this little prompt when it prompted me with that second window. And then I put in here comma spacebar. Now you're wondering, what is UFMS? Well, I use that in my steno actually for United States of America, and so I went over to auto replacements. And let's go back here to Alt U, programming, auto replacements, and if you look in here, UFMS will spit out the United States of America versus, and then in my other thing, UFM is the United States of America. But instead of making the macro be that much longer, I use an auto replacement feature in the auto replacements that I built in there to tell it, if I type UFMS, fill in the United States of America versus. So let's go back to the macro again, edit tab, macro, STY, and let's enter, edit. So here we have the macro variable 2 was the cause number, comma, and then space, and then UFMS space. That's very important to have the space in there because that spits out the United States of America space, and then macro variable 3 is the defendant's name, which is my third pipe up here on the name of the macro. And it's important that you remember the order of these so that you get them correctly in here. If I would have put macro variable 1 right here, it would have taken the TWO, so it would have put in again United States of America versus TWO, so that's not right. I needed to make a third variable for right here so I can type in the defendant's name, and in this case I typed in Breck Record, and then I hit enter. So that completed building that dictionary entry, but I wasn't through there. I wanted to build a second dictionary entry with D *EFT space macro variable 1 again was the TWO that I used up here, and then I had enter, and then the macro variable 3, which was just my name up here, Breck Record, it filled it in right here for me. I didn't have to fill these in. All I had to do was fill them in one time, and then any time else in that macro that those were prompted for, it automatically puts the information in for me, and then I hit enter, and that finished out and it completed that macro. Now if I wanted to, I could change this to be the state of Texas versus, since now I'm in state court, and that's an easy fix to do. I could make an auto replacement to be STOFS or something, or whatever I wanted to, or I could just manually type in the space state of etc. right in here and change this out. And that's something that once I kind of figure out how my new judge is doing things, I will probably adjust this macro to help me here in state court. So once I got all the macro completed, and of course I gave it the name up here, then the only thing left to do was to give it a hyperkey command, which I use Control Spacebar. And so once again, if I go back over here, I'm going to hit Control Spacebar. Let's do WN macro style 1. Let's do a cause number 2013 CR 1357, and let's call it Joe Brown for the defendant's name. And if you watch closely, it's going to do a lot of flicker here, boom and boom, and it did it. Now let's go look at my dictionary again. Let's go to STAOIL asterisk, and we have there's that style 1 that I made the first time. Now this is the one I just made, 2013 CR 1357, United States of America versus Joe Brown, and there it created the entry for me, and then I'm good to go. And then of course let's just make sure DEFT asterisk, and here we have defendant 1 is Joe Brown. So that is one of my examples of how I've been able to use the macros and take it to a level that really helps me out, and I wanted to share that with you all, and I hope that that gives you some ideas on just how powerful a macro can be for you. Thanks.